All right, we are live here. Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning, wherever you are, wherever you are listening us from. This is FPL Under the Radar's preseason, the third video that we are in. We reviewed Man City and Arsenal assets last week. This time around, we have two of our good buddies from FPL USA, Jamie and Nehal, with us to talk us to Tottenham and Liverpool. How are you guys doing, Jamie? How has been the break for you?
Doing well. It's been nice this summer to not have as much to do. Last summer was a little busy,
Hmm.
but it's doing well. I'm enjoying the time with my family.
Yeah. How? Tell us a little bit about your visit to England. And
Yeah, I know it was great. My wife and I left our toddler at home with his grandparents
hmm
and skated off for I think we were gone like 10 days.
hmm
So it was nice. We felt like foreign people in that like that's not our life living without a toddler.
hmm
So it was a lot of fun going to a couple of great games. Tottenham didn't win either of them, but we had a good time, and they were both exciting games. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, a lot of
yeah.
fun.
Must have been a good experience. Again, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. Hopefully, we'll have some
Absolutely.
good discussion on Tottenham. Nehal, how are you doing, buddy?
All good, all good. Thanks for having me.
How has been the break for you in general, and from the last season to this season overall? How are you feeling?
To be honest, much needed because the season was a little topsy turvy. Went
It's too
from
long, right? Yeah.
literally, yeah, literally was at around 2 million when the World Cup kicked in, and then
Yeah.
ended up like around 140K. So that in itself felt like a big achievement to achieve
Get
because like
come back indeed. Yeah.
anything that I was like doing last season was like going against me. All the 50-50 calls were like not in my favor. So that
hmm
was a little draining. But then Liverpool transfer news just keeps on keeping you on your feet, and then the drain still continues even in off season.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's good. Good. Hopefully, you are hoping for a better season from Liverpool this year around. Like last year, both of you were here with us for a review before the beginning of last season, right? It was a different scenario because both Liverpool and Tottenham finished in UCL places. This time around, both of you, your teams are out of UCL places, but of course, we both expect both teams to come back stronger, hopefully. That's good for FPL also, right? We have more players to look forward to. So yeah, again, hoping to have a good discussion about Liverpool in general as well. Thanks for being here, Nehal. Thanks for joining us. All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Yep. Wrangler and ZD, you guys are doing good.
Yeah, doing all right. 7 or 8 days, right?
Yeah,
For
only 7 days to go. Yeah, next Friday is the deadline. Yeah.
yeah, and looking forward to a great discussion that we're gonna have from Nehal and Jamie about Spurs, Liverpool, and also in general, like overall FPL, their thoughts. They're great
Mhm.
minds. So, it's been a pleasure to have them in our show. So, thanks for joining, guys.
ZD, you feeling good?
Yeah, all good. Uh, Eager to hear from Jamie and Nehal. What
Can
are
you
they
guys
thinking?
hear ZD? Okay, a
I
little.
think your microphone is kind of in.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may want to get your microphone closer. Yeah.
Do you hear?
Yeah,
There you
better,
go.
much better. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty excited to talk about Tottenham and Liverpool. And probably let's jump in. Um,
Yep. Let's get started. All right. So let's jump right in. We'll try to keep it short, hopefully, today. But yeah, I mean, whenever we start talking about football APL, it tends to get long. But let's see how soon we can get this done. All right. So first, we'll get started with the transfer season in general. So Jamie, will go to you first. How are you seeing the transfer season coming along for Tottenham so far, and what do you expect for the like the next 3 4 weeks?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think Spurs usually wait until the end of the window to do all their business because Levy is sitting there haggling over pennies, and then they kind of pivoted away from Raya and pulled the trigger on Vicario, so they got a goalkeeper that they desperately needed. They got James Madison, which is I think like a perfect fit. I think for where the team is headed.
Mm-hmm.
And both those I felt like were Tottenham did business early, and it was like, this is not the Tottenham I know. So that was kind of interesting and new. I mean, there's a lot of new faces or names on this list that are not new. They've just been either away on loan with Lo Celso and Udagi, and then Porro and Kulusevski just already staying with the team. So not really news there so much, but
Right.
And then Solomon was a little bit of I'll say a Levy special, taking somebody for free. I think was an opportunity, and to be honest, he's looked pretty decent in the two friendlies that they've had in preseason. So I think it does well. I think to bolster the squad. I think obviously the missing thing in this is all the Spurs players that are on the fringes that are just still sitting around doing nothing. Or Spurs have had a problem with selling their dead weight for years now, because I think Levy also doesn't want to sell them for nothing or for little. So we kind of have a bit of a problem there, but a little bit of a story of a little bit more of the same, but then also a new flavor with the way that they've done business this summer. Obviously, the big question remaining is what happens with Kane. And does he stay? Does he go? If he stays, what does that mean for next summer? If he goes, what do they do with the money, if anything? And then the other big glaring need they haven't filled is center back, which I think they've still got Mickey Van de Ven and Tapsoba on the list of people that they're going after, but there continues to be kind of crickets on that front. So I expect that they'll probably buy a center back, probably end up being one between now and the deadline. Maybe not even before the FPL deadline, but before the transfer deadline. And then decide the outcome with Kane. And then I just did see that today they bought a young striker, Velis, I don't know how to pronounce it, but Argentinian 19-year-old. So that should be interesting. I don't know if that's more for the future or just an opportunity to jump on somebody, but interesting they're doing business. So hopeful, but a little bit more of the same.
Yeah. So if Kane does end up leaving, do you think Tottenham buys another forward, or how do they reinvest that money, you think?
I don't. I think Kane leaves and it's Son and Richarlison up there competing for that striker role. I think there's enough quality there between the two of them to do that, especially in Ange's tactics, trying to stretch that line. Both Son and Richie are pretty good at being that kind of man on the line to stretch that defense and create that space between their defensive mids and the defensive line to create space for players like Madison to use that space. So I don't think they do anything with it directly for a striker. I think they let that play out and see where that goes, see how Ange does this year, and then maybe that money gets them the chance to invest it in the center back that they've been dancing around for a while.
Makes sense. And I mean, at least Madison is an interesting buy. I have at least felt like that Tottenham has kind of missed that creativity from the midfield for a very long time, right? So Madison definitely adds that to the team. I think Tottenham did have a chance last season also in the middle of the season to sign Madison. They kind of walked away from that and the kind of Levy kind of thing, right? But at least good that they moved for him early this season and signed him up. So yeah, excited to see how Madison fits in. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think they've been watching him. I've seen rumors since he was playing at Norwich. I think it's, as everybody knows, Eriksson shaped hole in this squad for years now, and I think he fills it pretty well. And so I'm excited to see what he can do, especially with the kind of change of tactics that they're going on. I think it's going to benefit him, and he'll benefit the club too.
Perfect. Okay, all right. So we'll talk about a little more on the team structure when we talk about the preseason games. So we'll come back to you. Nehal, going to you for the Liverpool transfer season so far. How are you feeling?
Initially, we started off really well when we got McAllister in. So that was a really big boost to our midfield that we needed like about three midfielders this transfer window
Mhm.
because we needed the fresh pair of legs to come in for all the old guard that was struggling through injuries as well as underperformance last season, especially the likes of Jordan Henderson, Fabinho, Thiago, all having to go through a big season before the last one where they were in all competitions till almost the last day of the season. So that took a big toll on us. So the introduction of McAllister was like a very big one for us, and then the Soboslai deal was really exciting. But as of now, due to where we stand, especially after the loss of Henderson as well as Fabinho, we have a big hole in the defensive midfield area that needs to be shored up really soon, or else our season looks to be not very positive. So we need that CDM signing, either Lavia or someone like honestly someone like an enforcer like Sangare or anyone
Mhm.
in of that profile would really help shore up our defense as well as our midfield. So in a Klopp system, the defensive midfielder is almost the third defender when it comes to transition of plays. We have been trying out different players to fit into that CDM position, but till we don't get that proper signing in, it's going to be a little bleak when to say as of now. So looking forward to getting a few defensive midfielders and also a center back hopefully in before the transfer season ends. But with the current signings, the two of them, McAllister as well as Soboslai, looking decent signings, especially McAllister to a big level. But
Mhm.
then we saw him get a little knock in the Bayern friendly. So nothing major has come out of it, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they're both fine going into the season. Yeah, so other than that, I'm just hopeful that we get the CDM in.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you on the Lavia deal? Is it just about money, agreeing on a fee, or what's going on with it?
So basically, how FSG works is net spending. So they
Mhm.
literally waited for Fabinho and Henderson to go out of the club to get that money into the club and then go for Lavia. So
Mhm.
we are currently valuing him at like 45 million. Southampton want that 50-55 million mark, but it's a little difficult to negotiate when it comes down to
Yeah.
FSG and when it comes down to numbers with them. So hopefully we settle at that 50 mark and get some add-ons in, which would eventually make the deal to be 55 million over the coming few years. So if that could be worked out, then the deal is on. But as of now, Southampton have no reason to actually sell him.
Mhm.
They already have the buyback clause that would be in effect from Manchester City in the next season. They'll get a quality player to play in the championship, likely boost their chances to win their way back into the Premier League again. So there is no motivation on their end to get the deal done. So it's all on to our negotiation team, especially with Klopp being actively involved into signings this season. It's been a little so it's not his forte of business
Yeah.
to get into all of these transfer signings, but then the season, the way that we have set up our system, we will have him to get those calls done, get speak to Lavia personally, which has been already done apparently, but then we do not completely know where his head stands as of now, because he's okay with staying in the championship. He doesn't have like a motivation to move out of it. So If we get him, he's a quality signing, but he's not going to be the enforcer number 6 that we are looking for. But still, a man in that place who is more suited to the role than the current options that we have at the club.
Right, yeah. I hope you get him. And I mean, again, with the Caicedo situation at Chelsea, that can get even more complicated, right? If Chelsea don't end up getting Caicedo and make a move for Lavia, right? So that can also complicate
Yeah,
things a little bit. Of course,
and
he
if
wants Liverpool, I think, right? But
yeah,
yeah, it can always get complicated with money.
I mean, in the opposite direction as well. Like if the Caicedo deal doesn't go through for Chelsea, I don't see us going for Caicedo because the valuation is really high,
Too high.
and I don't think so. The net spend is enough for us to actually go out and get a player like Caicedo at that price, especially with him
True.
signing a new deal. So doesn't look very likely for us in that situation.
Good. Yeah. All right. Again, thank you, Nehal, for taking us through that. We'll talk about again more on the FPL assets from Liverpool and how they're structuring with respect to last season and how we expect them to structure this season when we talk about the preseason games. Before that, let's talk about Tottenham preseason games. Jamie, again, you of course have a new manager as well as a new setup. So take us through in general how the shape is different from what it was under Conte or the previous coaches. How hopeful are you in general for Tottenham to improve this season, and how do you expect them to shape up?
Yeah, Spurs are a bit of an enigma, I think, because it's unproven, right? We haven't seen Ange play in the Premier League. It's a big jump from Celtic. But what we saw in the first, I mean, they've only played 2 games so far because they had to cancel their Leicester game, which is unfortunate. Would have been nice for them to get some more game time at this point in the preseason. But you could start to see the shape and the tactics start to play out and start to see some of the trends. Obviously, all the players are still getting used to their new roles and going from a team that with Mourinho and Nuno and Conte that were allergic to the ball and wanted to sit back and counter. We're now looking at going to be a completely different Spurs team than most of us have seen in the past, 5 years. And so it's exciting to see. I mean, over these 2 games, they had like 70 shots, which is unheard of for Spurs. Typically, we kind of thrive on Son breaking that line over the past couple of years and his insane finishing leading to goals. So that's going to be exciting. There's going to be a lot of shots, a lot of corners. The team is going to be in the attacking half and with possession of the ball more. The shape it sets out, Ange plays with kind of in the back. It's a 4-back, so they've got all these wing backs tailored to Conte's 5-back system, and kind of have to force some of the roles into Ange's tactics. But he plays with 4 at the back with typically a 6 and 2 8s, one more creative, and then up front 2 wide wingers with a striker. And the way that plays is when they're building up, those outside backs actually become inverted, similar to what Pep has done with Cancelo and Ake and Stones, and what Klopp is doing with Trent, but now Trent's just living in the midfield. Those both play narrow, and so they work the ball out of the back. It's kind of risky, pushing a lot forward, and then use that width and the striker to create space in between the lines, and use kind of combinations and triangles on the wings to kind of rotate individuals through those positions, between, like, looking at this formation, like Reguilon, Bissouma, and Solomon, more the 8 than Bissouma. I think Bissouma would kind of slide over a little bit more into the central, but uses those to create combinations and move the ball forward, create space in between the lines, and find a lot of kind of quick motions. You can see though, that the way Spurs kind of starting 11 played in these two games, you see they scored 7 goals, but each game they had 2 45s, and each team played basically 2 teams. The first half was one team, the second half another team. And out of this 7 goals they scored, 6 of them were by the second team, which was more what you consider their B team. And you could tell they actually played a lot better in that second half because the individuals in that group are more suited to the individual roles that Ange asks those people to play. And Kane is Kane. He's a world-class striker, but he's also had to bail Spurs out so often over the past couple of years that he's become so accustomed to dropping back deep and receiving the ball and kind of making things happen from a creative point. And that's not what Ange wants with his striker. He wants his striker pushing the line, which just so happens to be what Richarlison was doing really well in the second half of both these games. And that led to more chances and more opportunities and led to that space between the lines that you really want, that Ange wants to create, so that you can create space for that Maddison or Lo Celso to thrive just in the front of the box ahead of the defenders. It gives them less time to close in on that space. So it'll be interesting to see how really the first team, and with more practice, I think it's going to click more, but it'll be interesting to see, some more games really to judge and validate how it's going. And people like Son only played the second game because he wasn't there for the first or wasn't ready. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I think other than maybe Ben Davies, the first 11 is pretty, or maybe not Papesar. At least the front 4 looks like the first choice front 4 in that second game, right? In the Lion game.
Yep.
And what do you think about the wing backs in general, Udogie and Poro? How nailed do you think they are? Will there still be some rotation, or what do you think?
Yeah, so with Spurs, rotation will be interesting because they don't have any European competitions. So there's fewer competitions for minutes, which generally means that there's less minutes on people's legs, and they can don't necessarily have to be rested as much or often. But I don't know Ange particularly relative to how much he rotates his squad. I think it's hard to say anybody in the Spurs team is nailed, given we don't really know how exactly gelled they are. But it does feel like I think Udogie is going to be first choice on the left. I think he's just a really talented player, and I think even in this game, the first game, he scored a goal just because he was in the box and he's in positions where you're like a left back shouldn't normally be, but he just has a lot of talent. I think he'll make that his spot. The right is a little more interesting because Poro's got all the talent in the world from an attacking perspective, but defensively leaves a bit of a vulnerability in that role. So Emerson Royale is still in the mix, and very much so. I think he's probably better defensively, definitely better defensively than Poro in that spot. So I think it's hard to say that Poro's nailed. You might see times where he's actually playing in Kulusevski's role up on the wing, and the same thing. Like if Perisic stays, he actually played up on the left wing. If he ever had a run at that, if he stays, which I think is unlikely, but he'd be somebody we'd look to in FPL. Spurs in general, though, I'm a little bit. There's a lot of questions. Nothing's quite settled. Nothing's quite clear. I think there will be times where they struggle a little bit as they continue to implement new tactics and find how do we play with the ball, guys, because they haven't done for so long. So I think there's going to be some ups and downs, and definitely like these two games, they gave up 3 goals, I think, off of like 4 shots.
Yeah,
and they took 70 shots themselves. So defensively, there's clearly some work to do. Depends on who they bring in.
Okay. Abdullah has a question. I think we briefly spoke about this. If Ken leaves, do you reckon Richarlison plays number 9, or is there a chance that Son might play number 9? And also another comment is, I think I didn't watch the game, but there was a lot of talk about Son being pretty wide in that Lion game, right? So those two questions, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if Kane leaves, it obviously it's a big hole to fill,
Mhm.
and I think Richarlison and Son are probably going to be the two starting, and maybe they rotate time up top.
Mhm.
And depending on how Richie's doing, if he's not finishing, I think he might get the first chance with Son on the wing.
Yeah.
And if that's not working out, then Son may get a chance up top. And I think it'll be up to which one of them shows that they can do that role and do what Ange is asking that role to do. So I think it's certainly a chance, but I wouldn't expect it in game one or the first game. Harry's gone that
Right.
Son would go. I think Richie would go first.
Makes
And
sense.
Son's interesting because I think depends on how he's used. If we see him sticking out more on the wing and trying to be that wing outlet to Madison or Basuma and Udagi and kind of playing combinations off that, I think he's further away and he's not
Yeah.
he's not as much of an FPL option.
Right.
He's still going to score goals, but he won't get as many chances. And the chances that he's gotten over the past couple of years, especially going back 2 years ago, were Kane feeding him in, Son is blistering past, and he's one-on-one with a goalie. And who do you want better with that shot? Not many. I don't think he's going to get that kind of chance as often as he did before, unless he is making that being the one that's actually pushing that line back and making more runs behind, which I'd have to watch more and see what he does. I think there's enough of a question that I'm kind of cautious on starting with Son in FPL right now because of the question mark of, I mean, there's so many great other options. It's not that he's a bad option, and he could probably go out and score a brace on any day because he just flies right past the defender. But the other options, I think, are maybe better at the start.
Right. All right. Again, thank you, Jamie, for all that. Anyone has any other question for Jamie in general, Nehal, Wrangler, or ZD, in terms of shape?
One comment that the signing that we had, like Spurs had like few hours ago, I think Alejo Vélez, something like that, Argentinian. He's a center forward, by the way. He's a striker, so it might be long term, but we'll see. Like if Kane leaves,
it sounds like a more of a long term thing.
I'd be shocked if he got thrown in as maybe he gets a chance to prove something in practices, but he wouldn't be. And he's an interesting, from what I've read, I don't know him very well, but from what I read, he's an interesting kind of prospect that's not really well suited to Ange's tactics either. He's more of like an aerial threat, and Ange has a lot of kind of low crosses and combinations, and that's maybe not what it sounds like he's one of his strengths, but it could be something that plays out longer term, right? And he's young; he's only 19. So,
yep. Okay, all right. Let's move on to Liverpool's preseason. Nehal, of course, I mean, at least in the first couple of games, Trent kind of breached that gap in the central defense, right? A lot of goals. I think 15 goals in 4 games, but they also conceded like 9 goals, right? So the defense, of course, has a lot to improve. Now, how are you in general seeing the team shaping up? And of course, there's a lot of FPL interest in Liverpool, but right. So of course, people want to know who are the players that are potential FPL assets this season, right? And we'll talk more details about Salah and Trent specifically. But in general, how are you feeling about the preseason so far?
Preseason, from a very defensive point of view, has been really upsetting and also not been up to standards. We have been conceding goals to second, third division German teams, which which is not a good sign for our defense in general. Also, positioning of Trent being moved around in the first two friendlies just to accommodate him in the CDM position, because we had just lost Henderson to Ettifaq, and then Fabinho was left behind. So we had no other choice, and as well as Klopp wanted to test out how Bradley is going to be at the club. We do not have any other backup right back at the club as of now. Calvin Ramsey, the right back that we signed last season, has been sent out on loan. So as of now, it's only Trent and Conor Bradley. So it was a good time for Klopp to actually explore that option to check if we do not sign CDM, would Trent be that person who can operate in the center of the park and be the central defensive midfielder for us. But honestly, that limits his potential as an FPL target as well as a player as a whole. His USPs and his strength lie in his passing range as well as creating chances, which from him at CDM and expecting him to be the deep lying playmaker as well as then track back and then do the defensive duties is not his forte as such. So that was a little disappointing to see him starting in that CDM position. Other than that, Sabusla in the first preseason got 45 minutes. Did not look up to the mark initially, but then later on we found out that he actually suffered an injury, which was also one of the reasons to his underperformance. But it would take some time for him, especially his first game playing for the club. It would take some time for him to actually get into the system, although he's going to be one of our key players going into the season. Klopp prefers that advanced eight roles. So one of them is going to be McAllister, the other one is going to be Soboslai in most cases. Whenever we field our strongest 11, also another player to watch out for this season, if he can if we sign a CDM and if he can get his position back, would be Curtis Jones. At the end of last season, he was looking good in that advanced eight position where he did not have responsibilities of helping out the defense when we moved into the box midfield system. So another player to watch out for from our preseason. He is looking likely to start as the central defensive midfielder if we don't sign anyone. In addition to that, let's get on to the positive sides. Darwin Nunez has been scoring goals, but honestly, most of the goals have at least not at least two out of the five that he scored already have been a bit lucky, either deflections or bad keeping could has led to it. The other two that he scored against one against Croft and the other one against Leicester were decent goals, but again, what the comments passed by Klopp before the Bayern game were not very healthy. He expects him to contribute to the defensive side of the game as well. He can't be just the out and out number nine. So that was also a reason why Cody Gakpo, I assume, started this game against Bayern, where he needed someone to help out in the counter press as well as help in getting into the midfield to help out defensively as well. Uh, Other than that, from Salah's positioning a bit wide, but has been a key creator for us in this preseason. About five assists already
Yep.
In this preseason, and the good thing is that Salah and Nunez have almost started together almost all the time. Whenever they've been playing, it's 45 minutes of both of them together. So I see that partnership building up to be a big one for us. If we have to have a good season this season, we expect that partnership to flourish. and that cohesion has increased. In the left wing role, a few games we saw Diaz start, and then we saw Yota start. So from what I gather from preseason, that position as well as the number 9 position could be the ones of rotation, especially with the 5 sub rules that we still have this season. We can expect a lot of 60s and 30s to go into the game depending on opposition. So if we want to get a winger who can widen the play and is good at dribbling against low block teams, we can expect Diaz to start. But in the crucial big games, I'm hoping Diego Jota to start over Diaz, because
Mm.
he's got the counter pressing abilities, as well as he's really into his element of scoring again. So in the bigger games, I'm seeing him start over Diaz, but our best front three for the season still looks as Diaz, Nunez, and Salah. But it's a lot of rotation is to be expected from our defensive side. Till we don't get the defensive midfielder, it's always going to be a issue, because we don't have that enforcer, the one who's going to be cutting those passing lines, the one who's just taking out players if a press has begun, or a counter attack has begun. So we're not having those kind of players in our team as of now. Curtis Jones is a solution to it, but his first instinct is always to join the counter press, then to come back and defend. So that is going to be a mentality change for him to sustain that spot, or till we get a CDM in this window.
Right. Do you think, like, from Darwin versus Hakpo or Jota, do you think Darwin would start the easier games and Hakpo starts the tougher games, or like at least against the bigger teams, or how do you think that will play out? I think Abdullah kind of asked that question also. Can we even afford them as a FPL asset, either Darwin or Hakpo?
To be honest, it's kind of uncertain right now. But since Darwin got the number 9 jersey, it's expected from that Klopp thinks he's our number 1 striker,
Hmm.
and deserves the chances to start games. But then again, if he's required to do the defending, as you said, the smaller teams or the weaker teams in the league, we could expect Nunez start. But I still see both of them getting almost equal amounts of
Hmm.
game time. No one is nailed in that front two, except for Salah on the right, the front
Yeah.
two, the left, as well as the center forward position. I don't think we have a nail forward unless we have like an injury. God forbid, we don't want that going into the season. But
Yep.
it's from an FPL point of view, it will not be helping us in a long term. Because we could nail down a forward player, or the left winger last season, because of injuries to Diaz and Jota throughout the season. Also, Nunez having a couple of injuries. That's when Gakpo got his chance to
Hmm.
start games. So till that happens, we can't say for certain like he's a 90-minute man. Except for Salah, I don't see anyone in the front three to be the 90-minute person.
Good, good. How do you feel about McAllister and Sobolzai as FPL assets? Are they options at all? I mean, of course, we have all these other good midfielders, but do you think at least McAllister, he was a popular option last season, right? But is this year
I
he's kind of a dead asset from an FPL perspective?
Kinda, to be honest. He will be part of the counter press, so he will get those chances. But the key metrics which you pick a player on, say for example, he's taking set pieces. I don't see McAllister take those set pieces,
Hmm.
which he was doing for Brighton. I don't see him take penalty duties off Salah, because Salah always uses those penalties to get be in the race for the golden boot, which he always strives to
Yeah,
get at the end of the season, and that's a personal goal for him. So I don't see him taking that off him.
right.
So like from an FPL point of view, I don't see him as a very big asset, to be honest. almost like a dead asset, but he could get the odd assist. He's going to be a part of our counter press system, in which
Mhm.
he presses, gets the ball to the front line, and then we proceed from there. But from an FPL point of view, don't see him as proficient as he was last season.
Yeah, it could be an interesting one because he has the knack of getting into the right places, right? Inside the box, even from corners, etc. He looks like a small guy, but he gets into the end of those corners and free kicks, etc. as well, right? So it could be an interesting prospect. I think what's he priced at? 6.5 is he or six
Six, I
something?
guess.
Six, yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
I mean, it can be a nice kind of get into the Liverpool team. And as we were talking about the other assets as well, at least the front three, we don't know how much they will get rotated and so on. But yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
kind of an avoid in the beginning of the season, wait and watch how that plays out, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
till we get into a system where we understand who is actually going to start for us on the CDM. Because if we don't get that man
yeah,
into the club, then Curtis Jones is actually
yeah,
the big competitor for his spot, because he was
right,
playing off the left last season, at the end when we were doing very well.
right.
So that is another thing to watch out for. But the good thing about McAllister, he's really versatile. So he could also be on the right as a right 8/10. So that is a positive that would go into his favor. Where compared to Soboslai, I have personally I have a lot of expectations from him,
Mhm.
but I haven't seen it translate on the pitch yet. It's He's new to the club, so
Yeah,
that is going to
adjusting.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, a bedding in period. But he's also taken over a few corners from
Right.
Robertson.
Hmm.
So that is one thing that is going to be interesting to watch, because I think personally we are trying to phase out Robertson in the long run, because in this new system he does not really fit for us. So if we get that center back, Robertson as an asset also takes a big hit. So it's all work in progress as of now. A lot of things would evolve till when the transfer season closes for us, the
Right.
window closes for us.
Both Soboslai and McAllister feel kind of like Xhaka last year at Arsenal, where they're like they'll probably get involved in
Yeah.
goals, and score some
Yeah,
goals, assist, but they're going to be unpredictable, and you're never
Yeah.
going to go there. That's kind of
Yeah.
yeah, like you can't
Correct.
pick them like off that one goal. So they're going to get those chances, but we can't like predict which games are going to be the ones in which they're going to get it. So it's as an asset from an FPL point of view, you can't like rely on them. If
Hmm.
you're picking them, then they're going to be like set and forget and wait till the season ends and how
Hmm.
many points you get out of them.
Yep. How about Robbo? Data set again, kind of from your
Almost
perspective.
in this new system. He was overlapping in a few preseason games, but personally seeing a little bit of a decline in his own personal performance. Last season was
Hmm.
Robertson's worst season till date for Liverpool. Simicast was getting a few opportunities over Robertson as well, which is not a good sign for him. Also, it would depend on how we are operating Trent. If Trent has to start in the midfield, then we will have to play Simicast over Robertson, because Klopp prefers Simicast in the midfield when compared to like as the inverted left back in this situation, instead of Robertson to do that similar role. So a lot of
Yeah.
uncertainties which come with it. Also, set pieces were given to Soboslai, even with Robertson being there on the pitch.
Hmm. Hmm.
So a lot of moving parts, considering Robertson as an asset. So avoid for now in the beginning till we figure out what our system is looking like. Like we have played both the systems in the preseason.
Right.
We've played our normal 4-3-3 as well as the inverted right back box midfield formation. So Klopp is trying everything out to find what is the best formation for this team, and what would help our other assets as well.
Right.
So it's still a work in progress. We don't have the answers that we were expecting at the end of preseason.
Makes sense. Makes sense. All right. So the elephant in the room, elephants in the room, I should say, Trent and Salah, right? So that's probably the one, at least one of the biggest question in the preseason has been in for the last month or so, whether we start with Salah and Trent, right? And pricing is a big part of it, of course. Trent is by far the most expensive defender, 8 million, right? No, I think the second close is 6.5, Trippier and Robbo, right? If I'm not wrong. So
Yes.
he's by far the most expensive. And Salah's pricing is also, I mean, he's nicely priced, but again, with respect to Haaland being 14 million this year, and then none of the other like premium kind of players in that same price bracket, other than Kane, of course. Kane, again, with everything that's going on, is kind of a non-option at this point of time, at least. So how are you looking at it in general from an FPL perspective? What are your thought process regarding Salah and Trent? And I know ZDU also did a in-depth analysis of going without Salah versus going with Salah. So would expect you to make some comments as well. But yeah, take it on, Nehal.
So if he's in the inverted right back position, he's
Mm-hmm.
he's gold. So he's going to get into those half spaces between Salah and the right-sided 8/10, that hybrid position that we're playing, and create a lot of chances. But then again, it will all completely depend on what our transfer window is looking like. If he has to operate in the CDM position, completely no go from my end. So if we are so now we have to see the trade-off between how many goal scoring opportunities or assists he's expected to get over how many goals we are supposed to concede with how our defense is looking like this season. So that trade-off does not fare well in his favor. Against, like, I could take a bet against little weaker oppositions, but against the high scoring in the high scoring games, we could see him not scoring as many points, even if he's at that inverted right back position, because we are going to concede a lot of goals from what we saw in preseason. So I am a little unsure as of now for Trent to be a major pick for that price point specifically. With 8 million, you can actually get a better midfielder out of instead of Trent,
Right.
like from an FPL per se. But from a player point of view, it's going to help him personally, especially that vice captaincy is going to motivate him a lot this season.
Mm-hmm.
So he is going to be our next leader, so he needs to prove that on the pitch, especially after a dismal last season, at the start of the last at the start of the last season. His
Mm-hmm.
performance were a little not Trent like, and he was found out by because of lack of pace and the big gaps in behind him. So the counters were always targeted towards his side. So a lot for him to prove, and in this season. When we're talking about Salah as a pick, uh, very good from an FPL point of view. If he's going to get in those right side positions that we see on the heat map over here, because that's the area where he loves to operate. But the strongest point where you see him, if looks very wide as of now, to accommodate trend inverting into the midfield. So from an FPL point of view, you can always count on Salah to score those 20 goals and get you those 10 assists. So from an FPL point of view, he's still going to be a asset to own from Liverpool, because he's the only 90-minute man that we expect as an attacker in this team. Other
Mm-hmm.
than that, I don't see anyone else to be nailed on. But with that price point and with all other things considered, it's a big trade-off to look at. For example, now you're looking at a Salah and a 4.5 defender, or you're looking
Right.
at at a Trippier and a Martinelli. So
Mm-hmm.
now that needs to be analyzed from what from the perspective of what we expect from Salah, from what we have to see during the preseason, we can expect him to get a lot of assists because he's gelling really well with Nunez and he's linking play. And he
Hmm.
was in very good positions from goal scoring point of view as well. He was getting in those positions, but he's looking for teammates around him, which is completely unlike him, completely unlike the Salah we know of the past. So
Hmm.
he's taken up that responsibility of being the leader of the pack, attack wise, which is really good for Liverpool. But for a 12.5 asset, a little wait and watch for now, because with how our structures are looking like, from an FPL point of view, it you can actually go without him and have a very good and strong team. So it's I
Yeah.
don't want to sit on the fence over here, but still I'm expecting him to get those 20 goals and 10 assists that
Oh
he
yeah,
always
yeah.
seems
At the
to
end
see.
of the day, he will end up getting those goals and assists, right? He is Mo
Yeah,
Salah. I mean,
for sure.
one thing about this is if we go without Trent and Salah, and if they start hitting the ground, if Liverpool looks really good, starts scoring a lot of goals, and Salah will be involved, Trent will be involved, then we get panicked, and then of course there is almost no other way than to play a wild card to get them, right? Because again of the price points that they are at, right? You either have to take a few hits maybe to get them in early, or play an early wild card to get them, right? So that's the structural dilemma, I would say, right? So if you don't start
Correct.
with them, to get to them is a very very difficult job without a wild card, right? That's the hard part. uh, but yeah, ZD, you want to make some comments on at least on Salah? Where are you on that debate right now? Salah or no Salah?
Yeah, I think Nehal summarized it very well. That was, I mean, to me, one point is clear. Salah will actually give some point, right? Not point. I mean, he will actually provide point. But the price point, as we are not captaining,
Mhm.
we can have a like rather than have another average player, we can have another good asset. So that's the issue. So. I mean, I totally agree with Nihal that Salah. I mean, if obviously Liverpool will score goals and Salah will be major contributor, uh, whether it assist or some in probably one or two game we'll see he's giving like more than 10 points. But we
Mhm.
have to take that in the chin, right? Because um, like if you go with Salah, it's not nothing is wrong actually because it's he's very good asset, but
Right.
probably the other combo might give you better point. That's the
Absolutely.
point actually. I think here, but the problem is with the like price, rather than Salah as an asset. Salah as an asset is
Mhm.
obviously good, and again another point is he's actually, if he plays creator role more, creator role more, then probably he will not, he will get goal, but probably he will
Not as
rather
many.
give more
Yeah.
assist, right? Which is
Mhm.
like kind of okay, but you would expect more point, like as
From
the amount
12.5
you are
million. Yeah.
yeah, the amount
Uh,
you are spending.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for a 12.5 asset, you expect him to score say above 250 to 270 points this season.
Mhm.
But if he's just going to be that creative asset, he can be in that 220 to 250 range, which over the season, what is the trade like points per million? It's going to be a little lower than what we expect from last season.
Expect. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a trade-off you have to like decide on if you're looking to get the 8 million and a 6.5 defender, or are you looking at a 4.5 defender and a 12.5 Salah?
Yeah, it's basically you basically have to downgrade at least two players, right? Either
Correct,
one defender, one
correct,
midfielder, or two midfielders, however you want to look at it. But
Hmm.
yeah, you
correct.
for in order to get Salah, you have to downgrade two other players essentially. But yeah,
Even for
that's the
Trent,
trade-off. Yep, even for Trent also, at least one player you have to downgrade
yeah,
minimum at the minimum. Yeah,
It will
it's
be
and
very
basic.
hard to accommodate Salah, Trent, and Haaland. I mean,
Oh yeah,
whether Salah or the Trent. That's the
yeah,
issue.
it's
yeah,
one or the other. I think. I mean, if you absolutely want to have a Liverpool as, and I personally don't feel going without any Liverpool asset at all, right? That's not the norm for us. Hasn't been the norm for us over the last few seasons. So that kind of feels unusual, right? Without going without
Absolutely.
any Liverpool players at all. But at the same time, again, I think it's more the price point discussion. And as you said, Nehal, correctly, the point per million, right? There are just other players in other teams, nailed players, absolutely nailed players, who will get us 200 points in the season, right? Not 250s, but 200s. But you basically again account for all that, and maybe they come out as the better combo, essentially, right? So that's the trade-off,
Absolutely.
right?
And both of them are like priced as the highest in their tier bracket,
Mhm.
so that also affects flexibility of your squad when it comes to getting them back into the team. Like
Right.
if you don't have a plan set in and you don't save a few transfers, it's
Mhm.
almost a hit territory or a wild card for you.
Right. Jamie, any thought on Salah and Trent? Where are you on?
Yeah, I originally thought I liked Trent,
Mhm.
and but then I've kind of faded away from him. Just the flexibility of just how much you can do with that money, and I found myself not even wanting to use all of it,
Mhm.
but even using the two of the extra three that you get for downgrading him to a five, and I really like the 5.0
Yeah.
bracket for defenders. That delta does not match the delta in quality and points doesn't match the delta in price.
Right.
Um, so I thought about it. Salah, I think, is just too big a leap from the eights,
Mhm.
the 7 to 8.5 to 9 million bracket to jump up all the way up to 12.5. That I find myself making bigger sacrifices around than I want to make,
Right.
and so it's one of those things that you mentioned. If you don't go with him, it's going to be hard to get him in. If we feel like we all need Salah because he's just tearing
Mhm.
it up. But I bet you that there's also going to be, with how many people are in that bracket at price range, there's going to be a couple seven and a
Yep.
half or eights that you're like, oh, I wish I had them too.
Yep.
And so I think it's probably the safer play to just stay in that price bracket and not reach and make sacrifices elsewhere, when you maybe don't have to. And I agree, he's going to score
Very well
points.
put. Yeah. Very well put. Very well put. All
Also,
right.
one more thing I just wanted to
Mhm.
add, that if your 8 million asset, who's going to be your star defender, he is not keeping clean sheets. Where is the points coming from? Last season he got 2 goals and 9 assists.
Mhm.
So if you look at his major chunk of points, always comes from clean sheets and bonuses. So
Right.
if he's not keeping those clean sheets, the bonuses are going to fall off as well. So
Right.
he needs to actually get in like a 15, 16 assist season for him to justify his price point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And basically, if he does not keep the clean sheet, basically he's midfielder, and there are some midfielders who is actually
Absolutely.
playing in the front role for the better teams,
It's
like
closer
say,
to the goal. Yeah.
yeah. So probably it's better to buy a midfielder rather than Trent. I mean, when the Liverpool probably improve their defensive quality and the fixture turns out, probably then there will be discussion about including them.
Yep. Yep. All good points. All good points.
One thing I
All
just
right.
want to add
Yeah. Go
here.
ahead, Wrangler. Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually read an interesting thread from FPL Sway. So he mentioned about, like, whenever Trent used to play inverted role, and whenever Liverpool in possession, at that time Jordan Henderson was like wide. He has to make the turn widely.
Provide the space. Yep. Yeah.
Right.
Width.
Now,
Yeah.
since he left, Salah has to do that unless McAllister do it,
Absolutely.
right? And that's why actually we see that even in the Nehal already touched upon, right, that he has been wide, and we in the preseason we see that he has been in lots of assists. So, but as a 12.5, we don't probably want that, right? So that's another thing also, like, kind of put me off from Salah. Yeah, just wanted to mention that.
Yep.
But whenever they are out of possession, Salah has to be narrow, and that's when actually if opposition lost the ball, then actually Salah gets those chances for goal. So, and they play like high press, right? So there is a chance there too. But
Correct.
for in possession, he might be no wide.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next kind of fixtures and other players a little bit. I mean, we have already spoken about the assets, but we'll touch on the other assets a little bit as well. Fixtures in general, kind of a mixed bag for both teams. Pool, of course, have Bournemouth in game week 2 at home, which is a great fixture from an FPL perspective. But again, the fixtures around are not that lucrative. Chelsea and Newcastle away, Aston Villa home, none of them like cry out loud FPL points necessarily, right? From game week 5 onwards, it does get better. Wolves, West Ham, Tottenham away, Brighton away are probably not the best of fixtures again, and then Everton and Forest. By game week 8 or 9, a lot of us will probably use our wildcards anyways, so probably worth just looking at the first 8 game weeks. So yeah, I mean, in general, it's kind of a mixed bag anyways for Liverpool, right? It's not like uh, 7 or 8 bottom half of the table teams that they're facing, right? So that's another thing that goes against Trent and Salah to some extent as well. As for Tottenham, the fixtures are okay for the first 5 game weeks. I mean, if you start with one of the attackers, especially Brentford away, not that great of a fixture. Brentford at home are a pretty good defense. Manchester home is an okay-ish fixture. There could be goals, of course, from both sides in that fixture. And then game week 3 to 5 is pretty good fixtures, right? Bournemouth, Burnley, and Sheffield. So two of the newly promoted teams, and Bournemouth, of course, got promoted last season. And then again after game week 7, once they face Arsenal and Liverpool, the fixtures again turn for the good: Luton, Fulham, and Crystal Palace. So a little bit of mixed bag, right? So I mean, again, as we spoke about it before, the Salah and Trent topic, or in general, Liverpool and Tottenham FPL assets, I don't think any of their assets in general are going to be high EO, right? High effective ownership in game week 1 at least. I mean, of course, not EO is not the end of the world. You want to, of course, grab some of those points in game week 2, for example, when they face Bournemouth, right? That's what probably the biggest reason for some people to go with Salah, that they will captain him in game week 2 when Haaland faces Newcastle, right? Away. So that's a
Yes.
toughish fixture for Haaland and Man City, while Salah faces Bournemouth, absolutely golden fixture. So that's basically what it is, right? So any comments in general on the fixtures, anyone?
I mean, from an EO point of view, it's very difficult to see Salah at a 24% in
Yeah.
the last 3 seasons at least.
Yeah. Hmm.
So from an EO point of view, if you are picking Salah, you have to captain him,
Yep.
against Bournemouth.
Mhm.
And if you're not captaining him, then there's no point on getting him in the first
Right.
place, like picking him for your game week 1 team.
Hmm.
Uh, from a clean sheet point of view, for us, the top first 8 game weeks, I just see barely 1 or 2 clean sheets, like which are clean sheetable games, like Bournemouth
Right.
as well as Wolves. Those are the only
Mhm.
2 games that look like where we can actually keep a clean sheet.
Right.
Out of which, again, Wolves is going to be an away game. We tend to concede a lot of goals away from Anfield. So from a defensive point of view, I don't see any of our assets a must own in the first 8 game weeks at least.
Right.
From game week 9 is when we have our major fixture turn. So that is the time where everyone is priming to hopefully play their wild card. So that is going to be one to watch out for from then.
Any comments, Jamie, on Tottenham's fixtures?
Yeah, I think Spurs similar to Nehal. I see this, and even though they're green, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how many clean sheets Spurs are going to get.
Mhm.
I wouldn't go there. I think they'll give up goals that they don't expect, even to games. Bournemouth away, Burnley away, both feel like Spurs giving up goals, even though you think that, oh, it's green, it's a good fixture.
Mhm.
So defensively, I'd stay away from kind of even though that they kind of have these periods and chunks of kind of hop on, hop off. It still feels you don't need to overcommit, and if you want to go one Spurs player, I'd go an attacker,
Yep.
and you're playing on hoping that Ange's tactics set quick, and they start clicking early, because by game week 3, I think that's the streak that you want to see, hey, can they string on some good performances attacking wise in that window before they've got 2 tough games in Arsenal and Liverpool. And then 8 and on, it's too far for me to even think right now.
Yep, absolutely.
Brentford should be interesting because
Yeah.
if you remember, Brentford at the end of last season walloped Spurs. And so it'll be interesting to see the narrative of that game without Brentford's 2 best players and Tony and Raya both gone. I think that team's going to be a bit different.
I think so.
And could be a good chance for Spurs to at least start the season well, and then they got a home game against Man U that is always good. So I kind of like their early fixtures, but in general, Spurs are tricky.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to the data a little bit. We only have one plot today. Wrangler, you want to take us through this, and then we can ask for Nehal and Jamie's comments on in general overall assets wise, who they think are viable assets. Go ahead.
Right. So here actually we put all the Liverpool and Tottenham players, including all the like defenders and midfields and forwards. No goalkeepers here, definitely. So along x-axis we put non-penalty expected goal involvement. So goals xg plus xa per 90. And along y-axis we put minutes per appearance in the last season because that's very important to show, especially for Liverpool boys, right? The blue are basically Tottenham, and the reds are basically the Liverpool. So top right quadrant, basically the first quadrant, all the elite players you can see, Salah, Kane, Son, even Trent and Poro is there as well. So Poro actually seemed very interesting to me. He's matching like kind of Salah. So not Salah, Trent, but at 5 million. So definitely something very interesting, and kind of I'm really looking forward to see him at his first few games, whether he's an option or if he's nailed or not, right? Because that's the most important thing. But Angel's system is different, like as Jamie mentioned, right? So they might play for it back. So how Poro will fit there, that's really something to see. So two data points are not available here. One is James Madison, probably should have put here, but his non-penalty XGI is like around 0.58 or 0.59, which is pretty high. So like close to Jota in that range, right? Or kind of close to Kane. So that's another player I'm very much looking forward to. He would be, I think he had probably around 19 or 20 goal involvements last season even. So goodbye for Liverpool for Spurs. Now the one question I want to ask Jamie before I go to Liverpool. So, what about what do you think about Poro and Madison? Like, or if you have any other comments on other players here?
Yeah, I think looking at this chart, I would caution anybody from taking too big of conclusions from data from last season. I think Spurs, it's too dramatic of a change in system that. Sure, Poro was getting in good positions, but remember he was a wing back, so he was pushing up forward. He was playing on the shoulder of the box, swinging in crosses, and he's not going to be doing that exactly. Assuming he's playing in that inverted role, I think it's different. It's a totally different system. So that's, I guess, my big word of caution of making too many conclusions about last season's data. I think the early games will be a lot of information gathering about how's this actually working, what positions are these guys taking up, how's their data look like in this system, and if it's similar, then yeah, I think Wrangler, you're right. Then he looks like an attractive option around game week 3 if we think, hey, Spurs look a little bit more solid defensively, and Poro's getting in good positions, and he's winning that job for starting in that right back position, but there's a lot of questions to answer. Madison, I like. I think he's going to be in the upper quadrant of this from a minutes perspective, unless Giovanni Lo Celso really really turns it on and stakes a claim. But I think it's Madison's spot in that creative 8 to lose. And so I think if he's involved and they start to click, then he'll get plenty of goal involvement and he'll be on higher on the minutes. I like Madison. I think he's exciting.
So if I would or if you'd like to rank top 3 assets from Spurs, would it be Madison, then maybe Son, Porto, or anyone else?
I would say depends. Are we assuming Kane leaves or not?
Assuming Kane is leaving.
Kane's leaving.
Richard will come here. In the point.
Yeah, let's do both. If Kane leaves, I think Richarlison, Son, and Madison are all 3 up there because Madison probably less. I think Richarlison would be my number 1 pick. Son probably second, depending if he gets put in striker, he's the one. And Madison third. If Kane stays, I like Madison as my favorite pick from Spurs, partly because of the price difference between Son and Madison and some of the question marks around Son and his positioning. And Richie's not really an option if Kane stays. So Porro probably sneaks into there in the third, but I don't love our defense for clean sheets, so it depends on how he does moving forward.
Jamie, what do you think about Udogie as an asset?
I think he's great. I have had him in my team before earlier. I kind of ended up moving away from having a 4-5 defender, but I like him out of the options because I haven't really enjoyed a lot of the 4-5 defenders. But again, there's kind of question marks, and I don't really think Spurs are going to keep many clean sheets. I think they're on track for like a 6th in the league or 7th in the league kind of season, just because of maybe the rockiness of getting into the tactics. So I would only have him if he's a bench, kind of you're first off the bench and you're trying to keep budget low. But in general, out of the 4-5 defenders, I like him. But also potentially not nailed to start that role yet. So
yeah,
Spurs are a running theme here. Lots of question marks.
Yeah, especially with Reguilon still at the club, right?
Yeah, Reggie's there. I mean,
Perisic is there.
but Perisic is still there. Although I think he'd probably be used up on the wing if he stayed more so than in that role. Yeah, there's a lot of bodies around Spurs that are still lingering around.
Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, great insight. And yeah, Udogie is actually another name, really. But again, there are a lot of options there from Spurs' point of view. So definitely no go for now.
If you're looking for a defender, Eric Dyer is still around. So
that is true. That is true.
Sanchez?
Yeah, I'm not going there. Yeah.
Vicario could be an option. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Even Ange is going there at the current rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nehal, for Liverpool, we already talked actually kind of almost everything. Here, I mean, as we discussed already, and we see that, right? Nunez, his non-penalty XGI was great. This data has been taken from FFP Scout, but from FBDEP or from somewhere else, it's around 0.9. So it's pretty high. But again, the minutes has been always concerned for Jota, Hepko, Nunez, and Diaz, right? So I guess that's going to be the same thing this season as well, right? I mean, no doubt about it, right? Because if Jota and Diaz are fit, definitely there'll be rotations of basically 4 players for 2 positions. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Here again, Szoboszlai's data is not here, but again, I think his XGI is around non-penalty XGI is around 0.47 or 0.48, which is pretty good. That's another player actually I'm looking forward to. He actually I think had 14 goal involvement last season. So definitely in different league, but something to look forward. Like as you mentioned, right? He's taking some set piece as well from Robbo, so um, we'll see. So I guess like Trent and Salah, the first two choices. But again, if you want to rank Trent and Salah, who's first and who's second? Is it Trent first?
No, for me, it's always going to be Salah first because, again, from a very defensive point of view, like I previously mentioned, how many clean sheets are we going to keep? If we don't get that CDM in, it's going to be like 12, 13 clean sheets over the season. So, only solely because of that, I pick Salah over Trent as an option. But I also like Nunez as an option. Last season, I remember him having around over four shots per 90, and within the box, like around 2.75, 2.8 shots per 90 within the box on target. So those are really good numbers. But then when you flip it around to his finishing, that is always going to be questionable. So if you look at three assets from Liverpool, it's always going to be for me Salah, then Trent, and as of now it's between Nunez and Gakpo. But I prefer Nunez with only because of the certainty of him getting more games against the weaker opposition when compared to Gakpo. And there's going to be a lot of rotation from all the other assets. Jota, Gakpo, Diaz, and Nunez. All four of them are going to be rotated around. Also, can see Salah get a few 60-30s with Doak coming in. So well, if we have a big Europa game, we before that we can see something like that happening. So uh, Klopp really rates Doak as an asset as well. But if you look at top three global assets, Salah, Trent, and Nunez.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Actually, Liverpool will have Europa this season, so
Yes.
Thursday game. So yeah, that's another thing to look forward. So say if like Nunes gets, probably he's gonna start, right? Hopefully, um, but say if he gets 60 or 65 minutes on an average, um, do you think he's a buy from game week one? Do you? I
If
mean,
he
any comment on that?
if he's consistently getting those 60s and not the 60-30s, like if he's not being rotated around every other game for Gakpo, he's going to be our prime asset because he all from what we saw in the preseason, everything was going through the central channels, especially with the inverted right back position, or even with the 4-3-3 with the right sided 8/10 has been the one that is creating all the chances for us. From the left side has always been the winger when compared to on the right side. So all the chances going into the box, Nunez is the only one who's very central when compared to all the other assets. So he's going to be the closest one to the goal. Only if he can assure up his finishing and get those regular 60s, 70s, he's going to be the a prime asset to own, especially at that price point. 7.5 for him could be gold because the amount of chances that Liverpool create in general are fairly high when compared to any other top six, top eight side.
I mean, the upside is there, right? And of course, also from a macro standpoint, a lot of people might be interested to go from a Nunez to Nkunku in game week 3 or something like that, right? Once he's done with the first two fixtures. That could be a popular thing for a lot of people, right? And especially given that Nunez has scored a bunch of goals in the preseason. So at least take the chance and then move him on starting game week 3 to someone else. Most likely a Chelsea forward, right? Hopefully
Yeah.
Nkunku will be okay by then as well. So yeah, that's more of a macro thing, kind of a placeholder for another forward, and then you see how it goes and move on if it doesn't
Especially
work.
with the Jesus injury, we don't
Yep.
have many forward
Yeah. Not
options
not a
left.
lot of forwards for game week 1 for sure. Yeah.
Yes.
To start with. Yeah. All right. Any other comments in general about any other players that we didn't touch on? I think we touched pretty much everyone, right? Uh,
Yeah, just
yeah.
one thing I just wanted to mention: Van Dijk Konate going to be our
Mhm.
prime center back partnership this season. So if anyone wants to get into Liverpool defense and has the 5 million budget for that, Konate could be one of the options.
Good
He
point.
gets forward when it comes to corners, as well as sometimes also gets into those freak runs. He has been known for doing that as well. So if our fixtures turn well, defense assures up another good asset to look at for cheap.
Right. All right. Okay. Let's move on to our last section where we'll look at your current drafts. Jamie, you want to take us through your draft? What your thought process is right now?
Yep, you bet. So right now I've got Onana in goal. I kind of had half a mil in the bank when I made my team, and so I just threw it there. I think I've migrated. And when he came out at 5, I was kind of like, I don't really trust Man U's defense very much. I was never into Shaw, but the 4.5 goalkeepers aren't really like staking a claim at one being a standout option. And there's maybe some lingering questions over all of them that I've kind of just moved to Onana because he'd be like set it and leave it and take me to my wild card and then I'll reassess once we know that climate of what's going on with the 4.5 goalkeepers. So that's where I've started to lean, but I could back down to Flecken or John Stone if I don't want to go there. But right now I got Onana. Defense is pretty template. Estupinian is, I think, a no-brainer at his price and attacking intent. Gabriel is I want a piece of Arsenal because I think from a defensive perspective, they're all Ramsdale and Zinchenko, and they're all highly owned, so that I don't want to. And they're going to get cleans over that fixture run, so those aren't difficult to justify. Stones, I want a City defender but I just don't know which one right now, and I think that's the question everybody kind of has. Stones is in here right now. I think their fixtures are just too good, but it's who's playing and who's getting the minutes and who's going to be in there all the time. And you're always going to have that question with City. But if we got team news ahead of the deadline and we knew who was starting, whether it was Stones or Diaz or rather who was not starting, it might change where I go there. But that's where I'm at on the defensive side. I do have Chilwell on the bench, so that when they get into that good fixture run, I think he's showing himself to be getting in good positions and good value at 5.5. In the mid, I've got 5. I've got a 3-5-2 right now with, and I made this draft before Liverpool played Bayern, and that was obviously before the Jesus and Nkunku injuries, which have kind of changed the landscape of FPL lately. But I kind of pivoted over to Martinelli just because I kind of liked the option of going with a Darwin up top. And so I made that pivot from Jesus to Martinelli, and I didn't really love the other mids as much that I was having in that spot. Foden has been in my team since the first day. I think he's with KDB's injury and Mahrez and some of the other exits, I think he's just going to be – he's too talented to sit on the bench and rotate. So I think he's going to be a great pick there. Madison, I got one Spur in my team. Had to have one, right? And I wasn't going anywhere near the defense. So I really like Madison. I think he's going to be in good positions with a lot of space at the top of the box, making runs off in the channels. I think he's going to be successful. Obviously, it may not click from day one, but I'm willing to take a little bit of a chance to have somebody who's not in everybody else's team too. Bruno, Saka, pretty self-explanatory. I don't have Rashford, which is a big glaring omission, but you can't have everybody. And I think Bruno with pens sways it for me there between the two of them and the extra 0.5. So I'm willing to sway Rashford a little bit. Holland up top, and then just like you were just saying, Conte, I kind of looked at the landscape with Jesus and Kunku out, and like, who do you want there? The other potentials, Watkins is, I think, what everybody's thinking, right? But I like Darwin because you got a prime fixture with Bournemouth. His ceiling is so high when he is on a roll, and he just absorbs XG. And at least watching Liverpool last season, when Darwin was in the team, he just made things happen in a way that created opportunities and chances. Obviously, he didn't score them all, and there was kind of he's become this like poor finisher, which I think it's also because his poor finishes just look a little clumsy. But I think the ceiling is there, and I've always been a player to play FPL in a way that you try to maximize your gain and maximize ceiling. And I see Darwin as somebody who could really explode, and so that's kind of how I'm setting up. I think there's a lot of positions here that aren't going to change. I'm pretty set on Foden, Holland, Bruno, Saka, Gabriel, Stupinan, and a City defender. Those last couple might shift around, but I'm as we get closer and closer here, we're only a week away. I'm feeling like it's starting to finally cement itself and a little bit.
Yeah, looks nice. I think it's I mean, you have all the right template players plus also the kind of explosive picks in Foden, Madison, and Darwin. They are all great picks in their own rights, right? I mean, as you said, Rashford is probably the glaring omission, but again, these players can basically they can put up the same performance as the other players that you're missing from the template and so on. So yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
Thank you.
I have one question here. I see this like Chilwell as the first bench in a lot of drafts. So just one question to you, like I mean, there are always things happens in FPL, but if everything goes well, no injuries in game week 3, who are you gonna bench? Just curious here.
Wrangler's so far away.
I mean,
Wrangler is the planner guy,
I'm trying to understand because I see that Chilwell further in lots of drafts. So
it's a great question.
Yeah, because I find hard time here because City is gonna play Sheffield United, so I mean you cannot bench Stones. Arsenal is playing very good too. Madison is having Bournemouth. Man United
plays West Ham, right? Brighton
yes,
plays
West Ham but at home. So that's the only player I can think of. But I don't know. But yeah, just curious, because I was thinking to get him, but again, I was thinking if I bench him, he's expensive. I want Chilwell also to play in my main 11.
Yeah,
So,
he's playable against Liverpool too, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Totally. I've also looked at like, well, hey, does Darwin start here? Do I go Chilwell in that instead? Yep. I think there's also when I think of who I'm going to play in a couple weeks, like I'll have 2 new players in this team by then. Too, most likely. I'm probably going to make 2 transfers in week 2 to pivot and adjust, and who knows exactly who it's going to be there. It's hard to play who am I going to bench then? There could be injuries. It's difficult to play, but I like having one not minimal budget player on my bench so that I'm happy to play him, and then the other 2 can be kind of buyer if he has to come on, that's fine, and he'll get a couple points. That's a big deal, but I like having Chilwell there just because I can then capitalize on that week 3 shift.
And for Stones, like in last video we were talking to Alex, and I mean usually if Stones is like in the bench, usually he doesn't show up, so Thiel will be a very good coverage for you in case
Stones is benched. Yeah.
That's really good. Yeah, I mean I just wanted to know. So yeah.
It's a good question. I can't tell you that I've thought too hard about it.
All right, let's move on to Nehal's draft. Nehal, you sent us two drafts, one Mo Salah draft and one no Salah draft. You want to take us through you are right now, which or at least to which you're more leaning towards as of now?
I personally am leaning towards the no Salah draft as of now, only because of the flexibility it offers. It offers me because even without Salah, in the team I have like about 2 million in the bank, which I could like pivot any of these midfielders or forwards to. So the thinking with going without Salah was to see how Son does initially, and what Foden's starting like what's his prospects to start games. So if that's looking unlikely, then Foden becomes Son directly. And also Jackson can turn into any forward. It could be Darwin, could be Nkunku, it could be Wilson or Watkins as of now. So that was the whole thinking behind the no Salah draft. The Salah draft just gives you a sense of assurity that you have a differential captain against all the Haaland captains in game week 2, especially with that EO. If he even gets a goal or goal and assist, you can actually match Haaland's points potential. Also, what the Mo Salah draft, what I like about that is the inclusion of Diaby and Eze. I personally like that 6.5 bracket, and these two players are personally standout players for me. My only reason of not picking anyone from Brighton for that 6.5 role is Mitoma has looked good but has not produced the numbers from around game week 32. Game week 32, 33 was the last time when he got a big score or a big haul kind of thing in FPL. So when I look at Eze and when I look at Diaby, both are going to be the especially Eze is going to be the penalties talisman for his team. Diaby at 6.5 is potentially going to cut in from the wing and be the second striker alongside Watkins, from what we have seen in preseason for now. So those two players really excite me, and the common point on in both these drafts have been Nicholas Jackson. I really like him as a pick from what we saw from him in the summer series. Always ready to make those runs, and he's forming a good partnership with Nkunku and also with the wingers as well as the midfielders. You can always see his first instinct is to actually take that early run and beat the offside trap. So that shows a mark of a good striker, always eager to get into the box and get into good positions to score goals. So that is the only reason I have gone with Jackson. I like him as a pick. I like him as a forward, especially with Nkunku's injury. He's going to be the starting nine. If Nkunku is fit as well, we have seen whenever both of them are starting, he's the most advanced player in the team. So that is my justification for Jackson over any other pick. Uh, I had the option of going with Darwin in my second draft. We did not have Salah, but again, the uncertainty of his minutes has been the only reason I've not gone there. Uh, so that is my justification over my two drafts. I have Cash as my 4.5 defender, also because of what I've seen from Aston Villa this preseason. Whenever they're playing the three centre backs
Right.
and the one wing back, so he's going to be the most advanced player till Moreno comes back. Moreno is not slated to come back till one more month at least. So at least 3 to 4 game weeks we can expect from Cash. He's going to be almost operating on that right wing if Diaby is cutting into the second striker position. So that's why I like Cash as an option for 4.5. Estupinian, the long term plan for him is to actually move him on to Shar. and get into Newcastle defense or after the initial fixture run ends for Brighton.
Yeah, makes sense. All that makes. I really like the Eze pick, as you said. He's now the talisman of that team, right? Especially with Zaha gone on penalties and everything. He looked a lot more central last season as well. He's kind of going under the radar a little bit, no pun intended. But he is a very good player. He's a very very good player. So yeah, I like that pick. I like that pick. Not too sure about Diaby. I mean, of course, he's the Marcus signing. They spent a lot of money, and he has a good track record as well. But yeah, again, I'm always a little careful about new players in general. How much is Diaby? Is he 6 million in FPL or
6.5,
six
both
point
of
five?
them.
Okay. Yeah,
So
yeah,
he can actually like he's one position that I'm open to change. It could be Bomo
right.
or be
It could
any
be
of those.
Mitoma. Yeah,
Yeah,
there are a
any
bunch
of
of
those
good players in
Brightons.
that price.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
it's a
definitely.
very exciting price bracket to be honest. Like
Oh yeah,
a
it is. It is.
lot of potential can be unlocked in that position. If we find these players doing really well, then the whole
Mhm.
template can shift very easily, and then you can actually afford Salah, Haaland together in drafts
Yep.
without any compromise on like a major compromise in your team.
Mhm.
If your 6.5 bracket really fires this season.
Yep.
I have
Absolutely.
now a question for you. If
Sure.
Nkunku isn't injured, if his knee's fine and he's in, are you still on Jackson?
I
Regardless,
really like him as a pick personally, especially whenever I saw both of them playing together as well. He's the most advanced player. Chelsea is looking attacking, but I would also like want to see a few more games personally to like a few more highlights again to be sure about that pick. But I like him as an option over any other 7.5 forwards, even with Nkunku being fit.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of positives about Nkunku. He potentially would be on pens. That's, of course, not 100% clear. Could be someone else too. But most likely on pens and probably more nailed for like 90 minutes when he's fit, of course, right? Jackson
True.
kind of feels like the guy because of the work rate that he puts in, that he might be taken off earlier, like in 60, 70th kind of minute and so on. But yeah, but I think, I mean, in general, I like Nkunku over Jackson, but I can see why you like Jackson as well. He is a very exciting pick for sure. 7 million.
He's he's my grass FC pick for this season.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's really good on the eye test.
Hmm.
so Conte, who's on pens if Nkunku is not fit? Is it
Good
James?
question. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, Reece James, there was at least last season, there was a little bit of rumor as well that if Kai wasn't taking them, Reece could have. So yeah, there is a slight possibility that Reece could be on fence. That could be a game breaker, absolute game breaker.
And Chilwell to Reece James will be template.
I mean, by game week 3, I mean, if Chelsea shows good signs, I think a lot of people would be have double up on Chelsea defense, both Chilwell and. I mean, they are such nice price bracket, right? 5.5 million. I mean, I can see people getting tempted to get both Chilwell and James if they both stay fit, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
Vlahovic signing might change that Nicola Jackson's position, I guess. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that happens, and my no Salah draft will have an upgrade from Jackson to mostly Darwin as of now.
Mhm. All right, guys. All good discussion. Any last moment comment in general that we did not talk about now or Jamie?
Just that everything's going to change in the next week.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like 10
Especially
of these
after
players will get injured,
Yeah,
etc. Yeah.
yeah,
yeah.
especially after the Community Shield game,
Hmm.
Foden is not going to start. The rumors will start again, and
Yeah,
then
I
everything
think I
changes.
think it's going to be important, especially if you've got multiple city assets, to have a backup plan in case we get news that
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
somebody's not starting,
Yeah.
unless you're totally okay with going into week one with a benched But I think the temptation is going to be hard. That if we found out that Foden was benched,
Yep,
I'd probably take him out, and I need to have a backup plan to roll that out so that we're not scrambling.
And fight may crash in the first game week.
Yeah.
City has the first game, so
Yeah.
we'll always have leaks. So.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
Just one question for everyone. If you see Trossard or Kai Havertz starting in the central forward position in the Community Shield, do you pick them as assets? Because Jesus is supposed to be out for a month now. It's knee surgery.
Yeah. I mean, it's tempting, but at the same time, like, would they play every game, right? You want
Exactly.
kind of 3 Arsenal glue guys, right? Like, who will start every game, play 70, 80 minutes. That's the problem with Trossard or Kai or Nketiah, right? Like, if Jesus gets better in 2 weeks, right? You probably wouldn't want either any of them, right? So yeah, that's the problem. I mean, I like them as a short-term pick. The fixtures are there, right, in the first few game weeks, but yeah, it's kind of, again, depends on your play style. If you want to just go for it, I saw a draft with like 3 Arsenal midfielders today, like Martinelli, Saka, and Trossard, right? So that could be exciting. But yeah, I think my viewpoint is that, at least, I mean, I would rather want a more solid player who I can keep for 8-9 game weeks from Arsenal team.
Yeah, I kind of similar. I look at, I want to spend my transfers not on the teams that we know have a good block. I want to spend them on the people that are going to be, that we want to hop on and off of. And Arsenal, I don't want to. You'll get in that position because when Jesus comes back, and then you're asking yourself, you spend all this time questioning who's going to start and who's going to play. You'll still end up in that case anyways with Martinelli because he's potentially subject to some more of that competition. But I still look at him and like I wouldn't transfer him out unless he's not performing, which is a different case.
All right. Okay, we are at the end of our video. Thanks again, Jamie and Nehal, for being here, spending the time with us. We did end up spending almost 100+ minutes on this. Could not keep our commitment to keep it short, but it was all good football discussion, all good FPL discussion, and great to have both of you here. Thanks so much
for having us. It was fun.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good luck with your game week 1 drafts in a week or so. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Cheers.
Take care.
Cheers.